talking about the forward slip to landing, which can be one of the more daunting maneuvers to learn, but definitely one of the most fun. In this maneuver, you intentionally cross-control the airplane and dump the nose to bleed altitude. As seen in the overlay, the longitudinal axis of the airplane is no longer lined up with the center line of the runway. Instead, it's the side of the cowling in the fuselage that brings the force of the relative wind head-on. By putting the aircraft's side directly into the relative wind, it acts like a wall and decreases the aircraft's aerodynamic efficiency, which causes a lot of drag. The result is the ability to drop a lot of altitude very quickly. You can use this maneuver if you're approaching too high. Make sure to practice with your instructor before you try by yourself.
Or you could sort of slip right now too. It's like turn it and then yep, get it in there. Get it in there. Get it in there. Yeah, look at that. Yeah, there we go. Oh! Weird, huh? That was really weird. That thing coming down. Is this gonna work? We're gonna figure out here in a second.
Helicopter 82 Charlie, runway 4 right,
nice.
clear to land.
Runway 4 right, clear to land, helicopter 302 Charlie.
Take direction. Woo! That was awesome! Good, man. Good.
Thanks for watching and follow for more.
Happy
Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday.
How's everybody doing tonight?
We're doing good.
What did I say?
You said
So
happy.
cold and so cold.
Oh.
She just froze.
Your internet froze.
Nice. My internet is acting up again, obviously. Ah. Well, how are you
Well, how
guys?
did you do it?
How did you get in here?
I don't know. It's odd. I was just like hanging out on my computer and bam, there I was. I joined the show. Like, I can't believe it.
It's been here since last week.
Yeah.
I couldn't stand it.
Probably.
I got no friends, so I just hang on to everybody.
How's the weather in Arizona?
Got any
Arizona. Are you talking to me? Because I'm in Florida.
Oh, Florida. I thought. Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. I'm getting people
Yeah.
mixed up. You're in Florida.
It's been rainy. It's been rainy and buggy. Yeah, but
Really?
it's like, yeah, I was hoping to see a SpaceX launch tonight with the 4 astronauts going up, but they delayed it by 24 hours. So
Oh, yeah.
it's rainy and wet with a chance of rocket launches. How's that?
That's right. Yeah.
Sounds like Florida.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow. How about you, Gata?
Well, I'm also in Florida, so enjoying the very, very cold temperature. We're in the 40s. Can you believe that? Yeah, that's cold.
Almost
but
frozen.
not too bad.
well, if I don't break up, our high today was 10, and I thought it was a heat wave. So
Yeah.
the last 2 or 3 days, it's been
Cold. And she's got snow, about 4 inches, I think she said.
Yeah,
And-
that's a lot of snow. I've never been around that much snow. It's I'd love to visit though one time and at some point and see
I
what
think I saw on the news some kind of a thing that in Wisconsin, it's such little snow there this year that they're having problems with different seasons or something being messed up. They're having grass come up that's not supposed to be coming up, and trees are blooming that aren't supposed to be. Things like that are happening in Wisconsin.
Yeah, they had people's lilacs were blossoming a couple of weeks ago, like right after Thanksgiving when it was still warm out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's messing things up.
All right. And then
Go ahead. I think Jade's going to have a problem with her internet tonight. I guess we should probably bring our guest in.
Yes.
Jay,
I'm
do you
going to
want me
quickly shut down and hopefully my internet works better.
Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and bring the guest in, I suppose, while she's doing that. Our guest is Colin Boone. He is a certified flight instructor from Arizona. And let's see, let's go ahead and bring him in.
I had him in, Deweese.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, there it is again. Hello.
Hi, Colin.
Hello,
Hi,
Colin.
everyone.
Go ahead, Jade.
All right. Well, I'm going to quickly try to introduce you, and then I'm going to log off quick because I'm having internet problems for some reason here again. So, but anyway, Colin,
Okay.
thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
I did post in the chat Colin's Instagram account that you can go check out. He's got some really cool videos in there with his training. So, and we can learn more about you tonight. So, ask away questions.
I guess what we'll
All
do
right,
first.
so Colin,
Oh,
uh,
go ahead.
I was going to ask for my favorite question is always the backstory. So Colin, would you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing and how long you've been doing it and all of that?
Oh, wow. Well, the backstory, I kid you not. I got interested in aviation when I was 11 years old. And I was playing a video game with my brother one day. It was Call of Duty, and there was the helicopter you could fly in the game. And when I finally got the opportunity to fly it from doing well enough in the game, it was very, very unrealistic, and you could like reload in the air, and they didn't let you go up and down or side to side. And I thought it was just lame, and I want to know how the helicopter work. So I went down a Google rabbit hole, got a few different games that let me like fly helicopters and airplanes in them. And over the course of a couple of years, I got really, really intrigued and interested in aviation. Finally, when I was in middle school, my parents bought me a flight simulator, and then my dad revealed to me that he had his private pilot license, and then we started flying on the weekends with one another. So it was just a constant snowball of me getting more and more intrigued, and it's never stopped ever since then. So that's the long story short. But now I'm in Arizona. I'm from Southern California. Moved to Arizona in the fall of 2021 to go to Arizona State University, and was on the Polytechnic campus. Just graduated last December with a degree in Aeronautical Management Technologies, and hoping I can combine that with the flying aspect in some regard, manage someone's airplane or fleet or something like that. And then, of course, the whole goal was to fly airplanes, so that is the primary thing still. But yeah, that's a little bit.
Well, so what aircraft did you start on, and how was your progression?
The first airplane that I flew for training purposes was a Cessna 150, and I still fly those very much to this day. Then after I soloed, I moved to 172s, went to a couple of different flight schools, and then didn't have much luck with a couple of flight schools, and I moved back to freelance instruction and just at flight clubs, and then hired independent instructors, and that always worked way better for me, and that's why I became an independent instructor myself rather than working for a flight school. But mostly now flying 172s, 150s, just started flying some Pipers, and then every once in a while have the opportunity to hop right seat on a PC-12 on a family's airplane because of a connection I made when I was a line service technician, which was my first job out of high school. So fueling airplanes, dumping lavs, avgas, whole 9 yards.
That's a good range of experience around airplanes.
Yeah, more the merrier.
Yeah, absolutely. And your transition from being a pilot to being an instructor, how did that happen? How soon did it happen after you started your journey as a pilot?
You know, I always thought that would be the route I would have to take because everybody becomes an instructor to time build because the minimum ATP requirement is 1,500 hours. It's very hard to get a low time job where you can log time as pilot and command because insurance won't cover you until you have like 1,000 hours, which is what I'm approaching right now. So I always thought that I would become an instructor and then move onwards and upwards. But when I became an instructor, that was November of 22, and then the instrument instructor tacked on in November of last year. I didn't really know what to expect, but then I kind of really started to like it, and I started getting a good amount of business in April of last year, and then after I got a couple hundred hours doing it, I just got comfortable and got more confident, and then I had some influences which I started making the videos because of, and it's all just become this wonderful thing. But I started flying when I was 12 or 13 years old, got my license when I was 18, and since I was 18, I've gotten a new license or rating every single year since then. So it's from 2019 when I got my license to now. I'm still tacking on new stuff, and I should do the multi this year.
Do you have other members in your family that fly?
Yeah, so my dad has his private and his instrument, and while I was working on my private, he was working on the instrument. So when he got his instrument, and then when I was working on my instrument, he was my safety pilot for a lot of the time, which was really, really fun. So we did some cool cross countries together, and then my great uncle, he was a test pilot for Boeing and Lockheed and McDonnell Douglas, and all the big names back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and he retired flying the L-1011 Stargazer, which is the last L-1011 in existence today. And that's out of Mojave, California. I think it's still there, but they go up to 39,000 feet, launch satellites, and then dive back on down. Really, really cool stuff. But it's always cool. He has so many amazing stories, and I hope that I can have a lot of. It won't be as cool no matter what, because that was the old days and whatnot. But I hope I have some stories of my own one day like that.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah. Really, really cool stuff. So.
Aviation runs in the family.
Yep.
Oh yeah, but I got the interest. Again, just by playing that video game with my brother. I had no idea my dad had his license. I didn't know about my great uncle. When I learned that they had the interest as well, and then profession, I was like, what? So, just only helped the passion grow.
Anybody got any
Colin,
questions?
I
Bill
have one
H.
for you, Colin.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Oh, yeah. Just you mentioned ATP. A lot of the folks here aren't familiar with the aviation, general aviation side of things.
Okay.
So you kind of have to explain, what is ATP? How does that fit in with commercial, with your instrument rating? What's the progression that you would take if you're, going to be moving up the ladder and eventually say you want to become a commercial pilot? What does that look like for someone from student pilot, private pilot, and on up the chain?
Well, I often get asked by people, whether it's just like messages or just even a lot of my friends too. They'll say, "Well, what is a commercial pilot?" Or they'll ask me if I am a commercial pilot. I'm like, "Well, technically, you can become commercial pilots at 250 hours. But when people think commercial pilot, they think that you fly for an airliner or something like that. But anytime you are paid to fly, whether it's flight instruction or charter, um, anything, banner towing, anything like that, it's a commercial operation. So in order to be paid to fly, you have to be a commercial pilot. So it usually goes private, instrument, commercial. You can get the commercial rating and start being paid to fly, although there are very few options when you have only a couple hundred hours. But you can get the commercial rating without the instrument rating, but then you have restrictions on your commercial certificate. So typically everyone goes private, instrument, commercial, and then they all become flight instructors, because in order to become a commercial pilot, like everyone thinks of commercial pilots, like working for United or SkyWest or Southwest, all those big names that everybody knows and rides on, you need to have a minimum of 1,500 hours, and that's usually just for the regionals or flying corporate or something like that. And then once you get a few thousand hours, then you step up to the big leagues, United, Southwest, and everything. So usually people become flight instructors because it's one of the few jobs you can get when you have low time, 250, 300, 400 hours, and then you can get a lot of time very quickly and move on to flying the big jets. That's usually how the progression goes. But I've kind of found a sweet spot with instruction and had some opportunities open up, and I'd like to always keep that, my foot in the door with instruction, because I really genuinely love it.
What's your favorite thing about being an instructor?
It's really rewarding. I think a lot of people don't. It's hard to teach certain things, but I've always just been so passionate about it that when you find like-minded people that are interested and they're asking for your help and assistance in something that you're really passionate about, it's easy to communicate it. And then when people start making progress, it's just really rewarding. You see them progress from knowing nothing, and now they're soloing an airplane by themselves, and they take their check ride, and it's all wholesome, and you spend 130, 140, 150 hours with somebody, and you completely see them grow from nothing to becoming a fully fledged pilot. And the I take a lot of pride in the students that I train, because I know if I were to go up with them as a passenger or something, or if they're in the same airspace I'm in when I'm flying, I know that they're going to be a safe pilot. So influencing aviation safety in a positive way, that's a big part of it too.
Have you had students that have gone that far at this point?
What's
Or
that?
is it
How far?
still like, I mean, obviously, it's probably too early to have students who have gone all the way to flying passengers, right?
Oh no, yeah, I haven't had that yet.
Yeah. But do you have any particular stories about students that kind of stood out to you? Some interactions that were interesting or special?
Um, uh, Not to, I mean, if I think off the top of my head, not any one particular interaction, but it's interesting how everybody's very different. Everybody learns very differently. One kid, I mean, he just passed his check ride last month. I mean, I've always showed up. I always try to dress at least kind of nice, like a polo shirt or something like that, and no t-shirt or shorts unless it's summer because it's 120 degrees in Arizona. But usually I try to be professional and come from a point of I know all this stuff, and if I don't, I know where the answer is and everything, and give professional examples for things. But this kid, I mean, he hated ground because he just wasn't stimulated by it. It was very, very boring. So you kind of had to be vulgar in order to get his attention or make jokes and things like that to pull him back in whenever he started losing interest. So I thought that was always funny because it was just like hanging out, but then we would just hang out, but then talk about airplanes on top of it, and then as a result, he would learn. So I thought that was always fun. And then flying with him was he loved to do steep turns, and we would stall, push the nose over a bunch so we get a little bit of zero G. But a lot of people are scared of that stuff. So you get a whole mix of people and backgrounds, and people that have different interests and things that intrigue them. So not exactly answering the question, but that's where I'm going to take it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jim, did you have questions?
Let me think. I think there's a question on there that's a good one. A lot of people, I think, we fly ultralights because it's fun, safe, and most of all, it's affordable. What are you going to tell us, or can you tell us, what's your journey been like? To get 1,500 hours is expensive, and it's usually on your own money to get to be an airline pilot. But what does it cost to become a private pilot? And like, what does a gallon of gas cost if you're going to go out for a day of flying? What does that look like?
I mean, it depends where you're doing your training or where you're renting the airplane from, I suppose. But a gallon of gas probably at least $5. The airports I'm at in Arizona, Falcon Field and Chandler, that's to call the truck, it's $6.50 probably, maybe closer to $7. And if you self-serve, it's $5.50 to $6. So if you're paying for your own gas, that can be pretty steep, obviously. But usually people charge a wet rate, and a wet rate is when gas is included in the hourly rate of the airplane. And if you want to rent a 172, it's not uncommon to spend $160+ an hour renting a 172. So now you got to tack on an instructor on top of it, 50, 60, 70, $80 an hour, whatever the instructor charges. And all of a sudden you're spending, $500 to go fly for a couple of hours, and that sucks. So it's really, really difficult financially to become a pilot, but unfortunately that's just the world that we live in. I don't know how to make it cheaper for everybody because it's just impossible. The big flight schools, though, I mean, you can very easily be spending $25,000 or more on a private. I know multiple people that have spent over $30,000 on a private. But in the freelance world, I can get people their privates for definitely under 20. I aim for like 16,000 or so, but 16 to 18 pretty reliably. So.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
interesting. When I first started back in '86, I think you count on about 5 or 6 grand to get your private, right? So inflation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no
it's
kidding.
funny, right? Flying the old Trauma Hawk back in those days is what I was started my
Oh,
career with.
really? I have a
Yeah,
big interest
yeah.
in those. I would love to own one of those one day. They've always
We call it
intrigued
the
me.
yeah, they call it the Trauma Hawk. It's a low wing T-tail trainer from back. Was that a Piper? The
Yeah.
Tomahawk? Yeah,
Yep.
Piper Tomahawk. And so it had some unique flight characteristics, and it didn't last super long. I don't know how many are around still, but it's not the favorite airplane for flight schools these days. High wing seems to be more of the way to go.
I um I've read a lot about tomahawks because there was recently, I forget what magazine it was, maybe it was AOPA or something like that. But I read about them, and they took a when Piper was trying to enter the training market, they made the Cherokee 140, then the 160s, and eventually the 180s. But the Tomahawk was made on because of a survey that they asked over like 10,000 flight instructors what they wanted in a trainer airplane. And the 172, if I'm unmistaken, has a 69-inch wide cabin, and the Tomahawk, sorry, is 72 inches wide. And like most Pipers that make a lot of students uneasy, they only has the door on the right side, so you got to crawl over the instructor if you want to get out. But the Tomahawk has a door on the left-hand side, which is pretty appealing. And I never did much training in Pipers, so I never really had to deal with that. But having a door on my side would make me feel a little more comfortable. And 112 horsepower as opposed to 100 on a 150, it's just from an outsider perspective looking in, it looked like a pretty good airplane. I've never flown one. I would love to fly one though.
Yeah.
Deweese, did you see a question from Bill H. before?
Yeah, Bill H. wanted to know where he got that cool headset he's wearing.
Probably from playing. What was the game you said?
Call of Duty,
Oh,
right?
yeah, I was 11 years old. That was a long time ago. That was half my life ago.
You probably still play it.
I do not play Call of Duty anymore. I play flight simulators and race car games because I like things that go vroom and zoom.
All right. Travis asked, have you had any students that you had to say, sorry, being a pilot isn't for you?
Oh, that's a really good question. I've had friends that have had that said to them before, and I've certainly had some students where I haven't thought about saying it, but it just seems like maybe the way I was teaching wasn't getting through to them. A couple of students that were timid and overwhelmed at very, very basic things, or seemed scared in a way when approaching flying. And I mean, usually they're the younger students. I can think of two off the top of my head. And when I was 16, 17, I got to go fly on the weekends. It was the best thing ever. I was so excited to go do it. And you're trying to teach somebody how to do straight and level flight, and they're overwhelmed. I'm like, oh, I can only explain this so many times. Talk about in the classroom, talk to their parents. And I don't ever dissuade somebody from trying to learn to fly, but I encourage them to seek instruction from someone else to see if they have a breakthrough there, or to take a week off, come back. But I would never dissuade someone from trying to fly if that's truly what they want to do. But sometimes you try it and it's just not for you, but that's a decision that the person has to make themselves, I think.
That's where I think I'm at.
Why do you say that?
I don't know. Well, first I got to get to that point. I got to get a left foot working again to probably work the rudders. So.
Well, I think it's the right one that you need.
You know that there you go. There's a new point. Paramotors. You don't have to deal with P factor too much, right? Let's talk about P factor. So from the paramotor side, are you familiar with what P factor is?
Wait, not me, right? Or Jade? Or
I'm throwing out to the paramotor community
okay.
here, right? Does everybody have a grasp on what P factor is?
Guess not.
I
guess not. Okay, so Colin, here's an opportunity, right? Why is the right foot important?
The right foot's very important.
It's an inside joke.
There are 4 left turning tendencies that an airplane has, and one of the biggest ones is called P factor, where the descending blade of the propeller, if you're looking from inside the cockpit and you're looking out towards the propeller, the prop is going to turn clockwise, so to the right-hand side. And in doing so, when you have a high angle of attack, because of the relative travel of the propeller compared to the relative wind of the air that it's chopping up to produce the thrust, the descending blade will take a bigger bite out of the air than the ascending blade that's going up on the left-hand side. And as a result, the right side, the descending blade, will produce more power than the left-hand side will. And Newton's third law of motion, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So if there's more power on the right-hand side, the nose is going to go to the left. Combine that with the torque effect, with the fact that the propeller already on its own is turning to the right-hand side, it's going to make the nose want to go left. And then there's a couple other ones, but since we're talking about P factor, I'll stop there. But in order to overcome those left turning tendencies, you need to use the right rudder. So on the tail of the airplane, I don't have a model airplane on my desk, unfortunately, but in order to counteract those left-hand turning tendencies, you have to use the right rudder. So you think about the rudder on a boat, it just makes you go back and forth, and it makes the nose go back and forth as a result. So if the airplane's trying to constantly roll to the left-hand side and yaw away from you, you have to just bring it back by tapping on the right-hand rudder. And usually it's a lot of right rudder. Low speed, high angle of attack, coming in or taking off, that's really when you're going to experience it the most.
Oh, I've got this then.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Well, come to Arizona, we'll test you out.
You're right. No, I think I got a good instructor down in my area here, so I'm gonna keep working with him. But we'll see. Maybe I'll come down and visit my parents, and we can come find you.
What are you flying where you're at currently?
Well, I'm not in the flying portion yet, so.
Are they having to do all your ground stuff first, or?
I just did the classroom portion, and then I was gonna take the test, and then I had my accident, so the written test. So.
Was it like a formal class or like an online ground school, or?
It was formal. He did 6 students at the airport once a week.
Okay.
So, yeah, and then we would just go over everything that we read and answered the questions in the Gleim book. So.
Oh, okay. I have a couple students with the Gleim stuff.
Okay.
A lot of reading.
Yeah. So I'd be happy to find out the easiest way to remember things and take that test.
Well, the sooner you hop in an airplane, the sooner you get to apply all that stuff that really you have nothing to correlate it with at this point in time. When you hop in an airplane, you start applying it, then all makes sense. And then it's really easy to remember all of it because you can associate it with some sort of experience.
So my husband's taking his private right now, and we have a Piper Cherokee 180. And before I could even stand, I hopped out of my wheelchair, crawled up the wing, and I was in the back seat. So I wanted to be part of that. So, because it's like I feel like I'm learning as I'm sitting in the back seat too.
Yeah, coming along on the lessons, just by being in the environment, you're bound to learn something.
Got to sit in the back seat while he'd practice stalls too. Oh, I said,
so you know a thing about using the right rudder? He'd probably put you in a half-turn spin if you didn't use it.
Yeah.
Happens all the time.
Yep. So, okay, go ahead. Whoever put the question on the screen.
Duckspit wants to know, what's the farthest hop you've ever been on?
Just meaning like the furthest flight that I've flown, or?
Probably.
My dad and I, in the summer of 2020, we took a Generation 1 Cirrus SR-20, so it was one of the first ones in 1999, and really, really small air intakes, so it had a terrible overheating issue the entire time. But we took it from Southern California near San Diego. We made a stop in Redding, California, so in Northern California, overflew Oregon, and then we landed in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, at the uncontrolled airport up there. And then we flew back a week later. It was beautiful. It was really long, and then managing the high temperatures in the engine was not very fun. But we got there, and then we ended up flying it back a week later, where it was also very, very hot. But that was a little over 8 hours of flying each day, I want to say. And then in the Pilatus thing, where I sit right seat that I mentioned earlier, we've flown a little over 12 hours in a day before, but we always go to the same spots. So we go to Denver, Ogden, which is a little north of Salt Lake, North Las Vegas, to Southern California. But I think Coeur d'Alene is probably the furthest from San Diego to Coeur d'Alene in one day. Yeah, if I had to guess.
So, who's this guy?
That is my dad.
Hi, Dad.
Yes. We learned the hard way, and I mean, I'm very very lucky to have such supportive parents that have helped me with my flight training, because it's, as we discussed earlier, it's not cheap at all. But we started in Carlsbad, which is where we took that Cirrus from to Coeur d'Alene. So we started there. I soloed quickly in 6 hours, and at 13 hours, we decided I was 16, so I didn't have my driver's license yet. So my mom or my dad was driving me down to, which was about an hour away from where we lived at the time. It was about an hour away every single weekend, and they were driving me once or twice a weekend. So they said, "Oh, let's go up to my home airport, which is John Wayne." It says Sierra November Alpha, if anyone wants to look up where that is, which is only 15, 20 minutes away from where we lived, and go to a flight school up there. And the flight school is advertising G1000 airplanes, so nice big glass screens, and newer Cessna 172s, and those airplanes cost at the time little under $170 an hour with a block rate. So if you give them $1,000 in your account, they give you like $10 off or something like that. So the airplanes are actually worth like 180 an hour. And then they had even newer ones which were worth like 200 something an hour. And then the Instructor was 80 or $85 an hour. So really, really expensive, as opposed to down in Carlsbad, we were paying my wonderful instructor, still the best instructor I've had to date. He was a retired United 747 captain. He wanted like $65 an hour, and he only charged for the hops times at the time that the engine's running, because he just loved flying airplanes. And we were flying a 150 that was $80 an hour. So quickly, like, everything just stacked up, and the flight school was not very organized, had me in like check ride prep for 8 months, and I was ready to take the tests. And I eventually, after I got my driving license, went back down to Carlsbad to finish up, and finished up in a month. So he knows exactly how expensive the flight training is, unfortunately. But but yeah, we learned the hard way, but paved the way for better decision making going forwards. Yeah.
I got a question. Have you had any, I don't know, bad things, emergency type things that really did happen?
My first time flying at night when I was a student pilot, we had a flat motor jam, and we were doing touch and goes. And in the Cessna 172, I forget, in the newer models, I think it was a 2006, if the flap motor is in the left or the right wing, but the flaps are electrically driven, and one of the sides jammed, and the other side went up as it was supposed to as we were taking off again. So we had one side that was at flap 30, which is a lot of drag on the airplane, and one side that was mostly clean. So I stopped putting them up because I felt the roll of the airplane. So for anybody that doesn't understand what that means, the flaps on the back of the wing, they are the trailing edge of the wing. They come on down, extend the surface area of the wing, and allow more airflow to go over it. And doing so, you produce more lift, but you also produce more drag, which allows you to land at a slower speed and approach at a steeper angle. Therefore, you put less wear on the brakes and on the tires and on all parts of the airplane, because it doesn't take as long to come to a full stop. If you're practicing touch and goes, which is you land and you keep on rolling, you take off again, very efficient way to practice takeoffs and landings all in one foul swoop. If you're doing touch and goes, you want to put the flaps up to get rid of all that drag before you take off again. And in doing so, one of the sides jammed and stayed in the down position, and one of the sides went mostly up. And because one side had way more surface area, one wing had more surface area than the other side, the airplane started an uncontrolled roll to the left-hand side. And it was very hard to overcome, a lot of right rudder, and barely cleared some power lines and a couple of hangars. And I made an emergency call to the tower, and my instructor got mad at me because he didn't want to do the paperwork, but cycled the flaps, and eventually they came on up. So that was really eye-opening and scary. And even just yesterday flying, I was telling people never put flaps down on a turn, and that's exactly why. So I still teach that to this day. That was probably the closest call. A couple other minor things, but nothing
With students or anything?
I've had a couple of students pull the mixture on me instead of pull the power when they come into the traffic pattern while they're first learning. And that's always fun. They're doing their before takeout or before landing checklist in their flow, and then they pull the mixture, which cuts off fuel to the engine, and the engine starts going. So quickly, I go into like just emergency mode and go through my flow and catch it really quickly. But the engine almost quit a couple of times.
Oh,
So very, very minor. But if I hadn't caught it, then it could have been worse.
wow.
But no properly terrible emergencies. No.
Now I missed the beginning portion. How long have you been an instructor?
Since November of 22.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very cool.
And then it's been I really started instructing in February of last year because I was in the process of moving and stuff, and then I really started getting the full schedule in April of last year, and it's been nonstop since. Now that I'm out of school, I'm able to fly full time. I don't think, other than moving into the new place that I'm in currently, I don't think I've had an off day since the 26th of last year, with the exception of today. So I'm very, very busy. It's all fun.
How many do you book a day?
Oh, 2 or 3. I used to do like 3 or 4, but I've kind of stepped back and I've learned how important putting the time is to be proper and do the ground training included into everything. So before I go fly with people, usually I do 30 minutes of ground or an hour of ground to brief what we're going to do, talk about the aerodynamics a little bit, maybe talk about airspace, depending where they are in their training. And then we'll go out pre-flight, which will take 20 to 30 minutes, and then we'll go fly for an hour or a little more than an hour, then come back and debrief it all. And in doing so, I usually spend 3 to 4 hours with somebody. So if I do 2 of those a day or 3 of those a day, depending if it's 3 or 4 hours, then that's a full day. But I used to just meet people for 2-hour blocks and then go fly and then not really do much ground. But I learned that wasn't very efficient. But it's all part of being a new instructor. So
Right.
yeah.
All right. Somebody else take questions or ask questions. I'm hogging, I feel like.
I've got one for you, Colin.
Yeah.
Us ultralights and our cousins, the PPGs, right? We're low, we're slow. We fly at different speeds than the GA aircraft. Have you ever flown in the pattern or at your airfields with any similar traffic like us? And
Oh, yeah.
what does that look like?
There's one airport down here. If there's anybody from Arizona watching right now, down at Auction, which is the identifier is Alpha 39. There's a lot of ultralights down there, and I just saw a bunch of paramotors take off the other day, and they all took off, like 8 of them, all very, very close to one another, and they went like straight southbound. And whenever they're doing pattern work or just having fun, they'll just do crazy, cool-looking maneuvers, but they'll stay really low and stay out of the way of everybody, and they stay north of the runway. So they never get in anyone's way. They're very respectful, and they kind of have their own space, but they're usually lower than everybody else. It always looks really, really fun, and they probably spend a lot less money than we do.
Have you ever thought about flying a paramotor?
Oh yeah, definitely. There's a lot of flying aspirations that I have. So eventually, I don't know when, but I would love to start doing that just to get the experience. I don't know. Do you need proper training and a license and everything for that, or is it just
Proper training would be nice, but you don't have to have a license.
okay? But do you have to take like a class or something then to get an endorsement or?
Yeah, it would be helpful.
You take a class. Yeah.
Well, you say it would be helpful.
Yeah,
You don't want to die.
Yeah, it would be nice to take a class. Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
It would help prevent
we all fit under FAR Part 103. And with under FAR Part 103, the FAA has basically said you guys are unregulated. But everybody who's involved with FAR Part 103 says it's the best thing to do to get some flight instruction.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, and I heard something today. I don't know if you guys heard of this or not, but I heard, Randy heard that they were going to start making us all register with the FAA because of the terrorist thing that happened. They're going to start making us register just so they know who's got paramotors in the country. Not to regulate us, but just so that they know who we are. I don't know if anybody else has heard that or not.
I'm pretty tightly tied into all that regulatory stuff from my role with the EAA.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard anything. I think that their biggest problem would be is tracking and regulating that. you've got the exemption that's active for you, and so all the instructors would be registered under the exemption.
Yeah,
But being able to track all the individual pilots, holy cow, that'd be a herding cats
that would be
kind of an
hard.
exercise.
Yeah. But, okay.
Same thing with ultralight pilots. Anybody can buy one, and they can buy it today and fly it tomorrow if they want. Not recommended, but how do you even begin to track that and regulate that unless you put transponders on everybody?
Not regulate, but
And
just know who the pilots are. Who are the pilots?
doesn't that smell like regulation? A lot of people would say that, right?
It does. Yeah, it does.
Yeah, then
Yeah, it
you're
will
going to
be
need
very
logbooks and endorsements and all that stuff. So that's a
Yeah.
whole legal thing.
Oh yeah. So Colin, one of the things that we as a community I'll put us all under the Part 103 umbrella, is, we face kind of an uphill battle working with the GA community. There's a tremendous amount of bias against the light side of aviation. And a lot of us are trying to find ways to break into the GA community and convince them that we are safe, right? We're responsible pilots and we know how to participate well, in that community. But it's a lot of the old folks, right? A lot of the old guys, old girls, whatever, they just have their mind made up. And, it's difficult to get into some airports. Some people are putting their foot down and just saying, no, we're not going to allow, you bunch of crazy, have fun loving pilots to get in here and have a good time. What have you seen around that regard? And then do you have any advice for the community to help, kind of move that forward?
I honestly haven't heard anything about that. I always love seeing the light sport guys and the ultralights and stuff. I haven't heard any of that at all. But I would assume I mean, you guys have radios when you usually fly? I mean, I haven't heard any ultralight guys or anything like that on the radio at the untowered airports. Maybe it's just
hit
a
and miss.
lack of awareness or something from
It's
the
not
people
part
on
of the
pilot
training
side.
curriculum typically, and it's not required, although it is advised. So
Oh.
you have folks who are comfortable on the radio, and a lot of folks who just never grew up and never were taught how to use radios. So it's kind of a mixed bag.
I think, I mean, even at uncontrolled airports, you've got old guys that have their original like 1939 Piper Cubs that don't even have electrical systems, so they don't have radios either, but they're still ripping around in the patterns, and that's always annoying to see because, especially where I am currently, it's such a high volume training environment where there could be like 8 different airplanes in a traffic pattern at any given time, but everybody needs to practice touch and goes. So one person not having a radio can make things very, very confusing and can compromise safety. If everybody can be on the same page somehow, one way or another, usually through talking, I think that would probably influence it in a positive way. But I honestly don't know. I haven't heard of the discrepancy there before. I just don't have much experience with people from that community, but I'd be happy to learn more or to give it a go myself.
So I think you should come back some night. I should have asked you earlier to go over teaching a little bit on sectionals.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I know it's kind of late now, but I mean, I should have you, Jim, are you real good at reading sectionals too? From your past?
A few years of both way past and recent past.
Okay.
I could give you some briefings on European airspace if you really want to.
No, don't confuse me any more than I already am.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
So
will be interesting to cover both VFR and IFR.
Sorry?
It will be interesting to cover VFR and IFR charts.
Oh, yeah. No, I love the IFR stuff. IFR is so fun. The VFR stuff, I always carry a physical sectional with me. I always carry the physical IFR load charts with me too. But just for teaching's sake, the sectional chart is such a wonderful tool because you have the physical legend on there. So if you don't know anything or know something, then you can go look at it. And I always mix up the symbols for like the ultralights and the paramotors and all that stuff. So I always look at the legend because there's so much information I just can't remember it all, even though I use it all the time. So for the most part, I'd say I know the vast majority of it, but I still use the legend all the time.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where if you don't practice it regularly, you tend to forget. It's like, a language. If you have to practice it to keep it current. But yeah, it's
Absolutely.
been one of the things that have always been challenging for pilots in my circle, challenging to learn. And then some of us get it, and then they try to teach others. So it's always nice to transfer knowledge when it comes to sectionals and charts in general.
So when you guys are flying ultralights and paramotors, do you carry any sort of charts or any sort of navigational equipment or aids with you guys?
I wouldn't say carry charts because we don't we need our hands for the for the paraglider breakdowns. But we usually look at the area that we're flying at, especially if it's an area that we're flying at for the first time, to make sure that we are okay being there. But then there are other ways of keeping track of things. So there are a lot of phone apps that we rely on. Yeah. Gaggle is a very popular one, and it does have information about airspace, and it can even keep track of other airplanes in the area and other paragliders in the area. So it has a lot of really interesting features.
Okay.
But yeah, phone apps basically is what we primarily rely on.
Is it? I mean, are you familiar with ForeFlight at all, or like Garmin Pilot and all that stuff? Because that's what, just on the airplane side of things, what we all use. Sounds like it's similar
Yes.
but different.
I know that some people in our community use the Garmin Pilot apps, but Gaggle is really seems to be the most popular in the PPG community at this point.
Okay.
I don't know if anyone has others that they can. Okay, so it looks like some people in the chat use ForeFlight.
I think.
But yeah, in my
I think-
circle, Gaggle is the most popular.
And Gaggle has. You said you could see other airplanes and traffic on there as well. Did you say that?
Yes,
Okay, that's an awesome feature. I think that helps a lot.
that is a pretty cool feature.
Because airplane
and
guys.
honestly-
How does Gaggle do that?
Yes, it's actually a feature that they didn't have until recently. I've only started seeing it recently, but I was thinking that this can be a good way for PPG pilots to be visible to other airplanes in the area. Because even if we don't have transponders, we're basically invisible to anyone relying on IFR. So for us, if pilots of other airplanes can get in the habit of using Gaggle to track us, PPG pilots who are using Gaggle, that would be a really good thing. But then you don't want that noise for someone who's flying an airplane, because you don't want to add to the everything that they have to keep track of. So I imagine at some point, I don't know, I need to speak to the Gaggle people about that. But it would be nice if there was like an airplane pilot version of Gaggle that will just alert them if there's someone in the area that is not on radio, or someone who's just like who doesn't have a transponder but is in the area, something like that. So yeah, I guess working together with other pilots would help develop features like that and eventually make it safer for all of us.
I don't know how they would implement that into. I mean, or how Gaggle even implements that in the first place without a transponder, because everything like on ForeFlight is all with transponders and stuff, and ADS-B in and out and all that good stuff. But if there was a way to use like cell phone GPS position or something of the sort
so
to
it
give a relatively.
Yeah, it basically works exactly like that. So it's a self-report type of thing. So people on Gaggle would appear on Gaggle. So if I'm using the app, I will appear on it for other pilots. But if I'm not using it, then I'm invisible.
There would be. It would be kind of cool if they had a way to link to ForeFlight or Garmin Pilot, so that pilots could see all the people logged on to Gaggle. I don't know. Maybe they're. I just don't know the logistics of it, but that would be something huge that would influence aviation safety, especially in areas without towers, and which I think is where you guys operate mostly anyways. But
This could be a
probably
topic for another show, because I did a bunch of research with EA trying to find an ADS-B solution, lightweight one that we could use for the Part 103 community. And I'll save the details for later, but there's quite a lot of reasons why we don't have it currently. So it's interesting, and there's a lot to it. But Gaggle, I didn't realize, uses cellular data and cellular GPS information. So it's a whole different ball wax than the ADS-B network.
I'm going to research some of that. I'm going to write it down real quick. Definitely something interesting to talk about, because I think if pilots could see EPGs and ultralights on their iPads and or on their Garmin avionics, it'll make things a lot easier for everybody. And unfortunately, I think at this point, when in the airplane world, flying with an iPad or some sort of ADS-B is almost a necessity because of such a high volume of traffic, at least where I am, and doing my training in Southern California, now in Arizona, two of the most busy training environments in the world. I'm always looking outside for other airplanes, but the iPad or Garmin avionics will give you such a high volume of awareness that it's almost impossible to fly without them. So if there was a way to seamlessly implement PPGs and ultralights into an application like that, it would be pretty easy for everybody to adapt.
Right.
Well, one tidbit on that, just for consideration. They're requiring all the commercial drones to use ADS-B out.
They
And
are?
they're the ones that are the biggest threat. Yeah, that's the current proposal for that traffic. But they want to put them on their own special frequency. But the FCC is limited on frequency bands that they can use. So now we're starting to get information overload, because potentially if you're flying IFR and you've got 200 targets on your screen, and 100 of those are drones, you've got information overload and useless data because they're down at 400 or 500 feet. But us Part 3 pilots, that's kind of where we live for a lot of our flying time. So it'd be useful for us, but the cost of an ADS-B as a licensed, registered, compliant product is so expensive. When it costs almost as much as the thing you're flying, it now becomes prohibitive to have it. So it's kind of there's a whole cycle. Again, we can dive into this more later, but part of what I learned on all that stuff is that it's becoming very challenging to be able to provide a concise picture to the pilot that has meaningful information. So it's really interesting. There's a lot going on there.
Yeah. I just had no idea. But the more things aviation related, the better. Happy to learn about it.
Yeah, the trigger for us is about 2 years ago. Was it 2 years ago? There was a PPG that got hit by an airplane in Texas. He was flying about 5,000 feet, right? I think it was 2 years ago, maybe 3. Both pilots died. It was a very sad, tragic incident. The pilot flying the airplane, it's assumed he was heads down in the cockpit and had no recognition that there was a PPG anywhere in the area. And his overtake speed was so fast that the PPG pilot didn't see him coming up from behind or even hear him. Perfect, set of circumstances. And there was a cry out from the community at that point in time, if only we had a ADS-B capability for Part 103 craft, it would enhance safety.
No, because
and that's what
What was that?
So,
I don't know.
So I happen to have an avionics engineer in the room who is just dying to share his opinion.
Please.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Is this Gaston?
Gaston.
Gaston?
Yeah.
Gaston.
Nice to meet you, finally.
Hi. All right. So just a quick recap. I am a surveillance engineer for Collins Aerospace. So surveillance means transponder, traffic collision avoidance system, weather radar, and terrain avoidance systems. And what you guys are talking about is like the ADS-B out, and there is a technology UAT, which is it's different frequency, it's a lower cost technology to send weather, and aircraft or cheaper transponders could transmit, and that gets rebroadcasted to the ADS-B frequency. And ForeFlight, for example, can get that information of other aircraft. The issue, for example, the accidents that you're describing, The problem is most general aviation aircraft don't have a TCAS. So even if you have a DSB out, you have no way to display that in the cockpit, and therefore it wouldn't avoid that crash. And you can depend on a solution like ForeFlight or something like that as a collision avoidance system. So if you want to avoid a collision of a slow-moving flying object with a fast-moving flying object, you need a TCAS. There's no way to guarantee it any other way. You can't depend on an iPad. It's not allowed. So again, like Jim was saying, you can't put a $7,000 transponder on a $7,000 paramotor. And so there are solutions for drones, and they're becoming cheaper, but same issue. You can report out your position, but the only people who have the equipment to see you are people with the TCAS 2 equipped system. And general aviation is not that. I know Garmin has a TCAS 1 and some cheap systems, but general aviation doesn't have that. And so you still low flying, slow flying. It's the Wild West out there, and there's no way we can develop system for that because the FAA is not going to regulate that because it's going to be cost prohibitive. But trust me, we looked at that. We go to the committees. So, but
Gaston, when I come to visit, I want to talk to you some more.
Me too.
Yeah, we'll definitely hit you up for lunch or something since while you're in the area for sure.
Yeah, I actually got to do a pretty cool flight test in which we went to Europe with a company experimental flight test and we just sniffed the airspace frequency for that overloaded frequency. And it was fun. It was very interesting, but it was very eye-opening of how overloaded that is. So Gaggle works.
Gaggle is the best we can do. Full circle.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, thank you.
No, I'm sorry.
We should probably have him on the show one day. And,
I thought he was shy.
Yeah.
Well, you get him in his zone, and he's like, yes.
Exactly. Talking his talk.
He was dying.
Ooh, let me talk. Well, thank you, sir.
So, Colin, I want to throw another thing in for sectionals, and maybe a lot of people don't see this, but for me, with the military background, I'm familiar with military training routes.
Yes.
And for, you get military aircraft that are going to be, for me, in the cargo planes, right, it was 250 miles an hour at 300 feet. Mm-hmm. And if the ultralights PPGs, the Part 103 airplanes are flying in that airspace, they could potentially be up for a rude awakening, when somebody comes buzzing through that they don't expect to see. Yeah. I can remember flying low levels in Arkansas, and we would routinely contend with crop dusters and a variety of GA airplanes, and so we would always announce on Unicom that we're coming through the area just to make sure that they would have their heads out and looking around. But when we talk sectionals, I think it's something to help folks understand that it may be Class G airspace where you can be out flying and doing whatever you want to do, but guess what? There are opportunities to conflict with low flying high speed aircraft.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know what else to really add on to that other than making it known. Maybe if like Gaggle or something has a way to report that there are military training routes in the area. It's something that we very rarely go over because there's not that many of them immediately where I am. But if we go south, like towards Tucson, there's a whole bunch of them. I've only seen a military jet operating on a military training route one time, but he was moving, and I could see how if you're really low and slow and just enjoying your day, you could very much so be in for a rude awakening. So we always go over the 3 digits versus the 4 digits, and this is why I need the legend, because I always forget which one means which, because some of the military training routes are above 1,500 feet AGL and AGL ground level. I don't know if you guys use it, but then some of which are below 1,500 AGL, and then some of them are instrument, which are the IR routes, and then some of them are VFR routes, the visual, which are the VR routes. So knowing how to discern those from one another can be very, very useful. Because if they're above 1500 feet AGL, then you're fine. But you know, if you're gonna be low and slow, and you got F-15s that are screaming through, then watch out.
All right, we
The
got
good
one
news
question.
about Seattle is that they're very responsive to requests for features and things like that. So this may be something they can implement.
Yeah, and if you wherever you're flying, if you have a local sectional, and I mean, there's got to be a YouTube video that's 2 or 3 minutes long about military training routes and what to expect. It would be a rather easy thing to understand and to educate yourself on. If that could just be more well known, I think that would solve the problem that Jim was referring to.
All right, going back. Do any older students catch an attitude with you because you're so young?
No, I can't say so. I usually people think that I'm older when I go to fly with them. I think I'm like 26 or 27, but I'm 22. So I haven't had anybody approach it in that way, and usually it's more professional and they have questions. And like, my first student that I had from start to finish was certainly someone who knew a lot more than me about a lot of things. He was an actual rocket scientist for Raytheon, so he was building rocket parts, mechanical engineer. I mean, the guy was a freaking genius. And now I'm trying to teach him the first time I met him basic aerodynamics, and then 30 minutes into the lesson, he's like, "Oh, by the way, I was a rocket scientist for Raytheon." I was like, "Why didn't you tell me this information?" Like, I'm explaining to you things like we're in high school physics class, and he could explain this to me forwards, backwards, sideways, whatever. And then we talked about the systems, and he already understands all the systems in way more depth than I ever could. But it was never like, "I know more than you. Like, why am I paying you?" sort of thing, because there's still value in the relationship. So I haven't encountered that, but I've had some people that just we just don't gel, and that's okay, and they find instruction elsewhere, or they just don't like the airplanes that we're flying. And usually it's not age related; it's just other discrepancies. But back to the conversation from earlier, never going to dissuade someone from flying, but maybe it's just not a good fit. Yeah.
All right, your dad is saying here, I may have misunderstood, but in GA with ADSB, we can see other aircraft with the ADSB out. TCAS integrates other aircraft and is prohibitively expensive even by general standards.
I think that's what. I'm sorry, I forgot his name. The really smart avionics. Yes, Gaston. I think that's kind of what he was saying, where it's ridiculous to put really, really expensive equipment onto PPGs or ultralights, and then even in GA we don't have TCAS systems. So if TCAS is able to see that type of technology, then it's too expensive. Does he want to come back? Explain it. I don't fully understand what he's saying here, but with ADSB in, we are able to see aircraft that have ADSB out, and since January 1st of 2020, it's been a requirement that all GA airplanes have ADSB out. Usually, it's connected through one of the lights or something like that. That's how it's powered. So if your nav lights are inoperative and your nav lights are connected to the ADSB out, you can't go fly, because that's how your ADSB out is being broadcasted. So I don't fly any airplanes currently that have ADSB in. It's all just with the iPad, and then I'm just looking outside as well. But we have the Sentries and the Stratus things, which are like kind of like portable transponders in a way, and you suction them to the window, and then it gives you that traffic. It's a portable ADSB in, essentially. But I
was going to say, it might help people understand too what TCAS. It's a threat collision and avoidance system, and if it sees that two airplanes are on a collision vector, it will actually announce and say, "Turn right," and tells the other airplane to turn left, and it will help the two airplanes deconflict with each other, especially when you're in IFR. There's been a number of those midair collisions for different reasons. I remember back during the first Gulf War, we lost a tanker over Saudi Arabia because there was a midair collision, and if we had TCAS, that could have been prevented. So it's a, that, and then that's why it's so expensive, is because it has a lot of software behind it, a lot of intelligence, and it's just prohibitive for general aviation and for light aircraft to have a system of that caliber. So that's why the Mark One eyeball, right? We're doing see and avoid. We become our own TCAS, just like I'm my own GPS. So, all that good stuff.
And then wasn't there an accident? And I don't want to go like off course, but I think there was an accident in the 80s or 90s, and there was a Tupolev airliner, like one of the Russian ones, in a Boeing 757 somewhere over the Atlantic. And ATC told the TCAS was telling them each to deviate from one another.
Okay.
And then,
Hey guys.
Yep. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about?
Uberlinger, the Uberlinger crash. It was a Russian charter and a DHL aircraft, and actually I was involved in the update to the TCAS logic to address that. So and I got to flight test that same incident to make sure that the new TCAS logic deconflicted. So what happened is transponders have modest addresses, and the lower the modest address gets given mastery. So you have a master transponder and a slave transponder. So in the Uberlinger crash, the Russian was all the aircraft, so it became the master, and the DHL plane was an airplane, and it was a slave. The U.S. pilots follow the TCAS computer, and they were told to climb, and the Russian pilots were told to descend, but the Swiss air traffic controller told them to climb. And the Russian training that is very heavy from ground direction, they follow the advisory of ground control, where the American, you're usually more trained to be independent in decision making, so they follow the computer. Mm-hmm. And the TCAS computer computed that they were going to collide, and so they issue a reversal. But the reversal was not followed by the pilots, and it was too late, and they could not correct. So the TCAS computer worked correctly, but they could not account to the pilots disobeying the direction. So they changed the logic to when you have a master transponder that is misbehaving, to allow the slave to disobey, basically, and either reverse earlier or increase the guidance sooner. But yeah, it was a fascinating situation. And that the TCAS computer only issues vertical separation. TCAS 3 was supposed to do left and right, but they realized after they did all the analysis that there was no value in that. The vertical separation, either climb or descend, was the only maneuver necessary. They just need to get pilots to obey.
It wasn't any fault of the equipment, though. It was the fact that the Russian airplane had followed air traffic control.
Yeah, no, and it was actually, it's quite an interesting case because the air traffic, the ground controller were understaffed, and one of the radio systems that connect other ATCs was under maintenance, so they had their backup system was down. And the air traffic controller was actually assassinated by the parents of one of the victims in the Russian plane later on. So it was the Uberlinger situation was quite significant in aviation.
Yes.
But I actually got to create a test plan and brief the flight test pilots in doing that maneuver, and we invited the FAA to come and fly with us. They decided to not come for that flight. They didn't want to be in the aircraft for that, but
and missed the party.
Yeah, it was fun. It was an interesting reenactment. So,
wow, you're
because it's fun.
Book of knowledge there, sir.
No kidding.
Yeah,
just about those things.
we're gonna have to bring them on.
I still thought he was shy.
Yeah, outside of that, I guess.
You're talking airplanes.
Well, cool. Hey, real quick, I want to say hi to everybody before we forget, because we already hit over an hour. I mean, having fun here.
Time flies.
So we got Colin's dad, Rod, in here. John Wayne. Cody Smith from Lone Star. Linda Anderson. Bill H. Wendy. Let's see. My computer is acting slow. Kramer. She's in Texas. Wendy's in Pennsylvania or Florida. Bill H., I think he's in Louisiana. Travis DuPont, he's Texas, Louisiana. Let's see. Duckspit, North Carolina. And Deweese and Randy are in Mississippi. Dawn Belleville, she's in, I believe they're in Southern Illinois. So, and my mom, Patricia J., and my dad, Leroy, they're down in Arizona now.
Woo! That's right.
And looks like it for the chat.
No,
So,
I saw Scuba.
oh, Scuba's in there?
Yeah, Kramer.
I said Kramer. Sorry, Scuba, I didn't see you. Sorry. So,
I think
yeah.
my favorite comment was from John Wayne when I had mentioned the airport, John Wayne, and
John
he
Wayne,
said,
yeah.
"That's my airport." I saw that earlier. I was trying not to laugh when I was talking, but I thought that was funny.
Yeah, Linda. Go Lions. How about go Packers? So
Packers killed it.
Oh, and
Yeah.
Grandpa PPG was in here too.
Oh, yeah. I saw that you said hi to him.
Yeah.
So cool. So I'm going to just take a moment, Colin, and I'm going to do the spinny wheel of spinnies because I
Okay.
think Travis is in here. Travis, are you still in here to say it's rigged?
Yeah. He's working. So he's working on keeping the electricity on.
Oh, okay.
So he may be listening.
He just dropped in.
There he
Okay.
is.
Oh, he's
Yeah,
here.
there he is. There he is. It's rigged,
got-
Travis.
It's not rigged tonight, so maybe you got a chance of winning. So anybody who hasn't made a comment yet, if you want to make a comment, you get your name on the
There it is.
spinny wheel of
It's still
rigged.
rigged.
Travis, try to stick around to watch your little section of the outro. I changed it up a little for you. So, all right, I'm gonna share screen here real quick. Maybe.
Only her friends win anything. You're her friend, Travis.
Yeah. All right, can you see that screen?
Yeah.
Giveaway tool.
Yeah.
All right.
There it goes.
So make some comments real quick here. We've got, it's just saying 13 people making comments, so that might be all that's in the chat portion.
Maybe, I don't know.
All right. Here we go. Good luck. Boy, if it's Linda again. Oh, Gaston.
I think he earned it today.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Congrats, sir. So, G, you got to send me his address and we'll get something down to him, okay?
Awesome. Thank you.
So, all right. Any other questions for Colin at all? So, one thing is check out Colin's. I'm going to share his YouTube page, or not YouTube, his Instagram page. Go check out Colin right here at Colin_Boone_Aviation. He's got some pretty cool videos in here. So working with some of his.
Soon.
Yeah.
YouTube
Okay.
soon.
Good.
I'd like to. I guess I'll just speak on what the plan is. Once I still, since I've been working so much, I haven't had time to fully set up the new place I moved into like 3 weeks ago.
Oh.
But I've always been a flight sim nerd, and then recently into like racing sims and stuff, but with flight sim stuff, I'd like to start streaming that and teaching people online for free, whether it's IFR or VFR stuff, on Twitch or YouTube, and then uploading it to YouTube afterwards, and then making more full videos of the flights that I do in real life and putting that onto YouTube. So at some point in the next couple of months, that's going to start. So that's in the works.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
All right, Jim, do you got any more questions for him? I know you probably do, but
Well, there's only so many bunny holes you can chase in one night.
yeah. So next week we have, I just want to quickly say, we have another Instagram person, a Jonathan Peterson, and he has an RV plane.
Very
RV
cool.
plane.
Yep. So, and Colin, if you're around, you're welcome to come in with us and
All right.
some questions if you want.
Is it the same link every time?
No, if I'd send you one, so
Okay.
it's different because, right, Jim?
Yes, different every time. Keep it interesting.
Because he tried coming in to last week's link, so yeah.
Thank you so
Gotcha.
much for joining us tonight, Colin. We appreciate
Oh
it.
no,
Yes.
the pleasure is mine. Thank you guys. That was really fun.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you,
Never
Jim.
done anything like this before, so that was awesome.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. It's like just trying to come up with different topics and different sports, and we've had hot air balloons, parachuters, wingsuit.
Astronauts.
Had an astronaut on, one of Elon
Fantastic.
Musk's astronauts. So just pretty cool to be able to talk to different people and throughout the world and everything. So we really appreciate that. And if we get down from Wisconsin down to Arizona sometime, and we get back up to the Chandler area where the Milwaukee Brewers train, we'll have to come find you.
Well, my brother is he's in the minor leagues right now with the
Really?
Indians or the Guardians. He's a pitcher, so
Oh,
might see ya.
cool.
Yeah.
How long has he been in there?
This will be his third year right now, so we're hoping this is the one. right here.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, you'll have to let me know because I've got a son that's he's 21 and he is a big baseball nut. So
Okay.
yeah,
For sure.
we took him down there one year and they were playing a college team, the Brewers, and the UW Milwaukee team, and he got to be bat boy down there. So that was
Oh, that's
pretty
awesome.
cool. Yeah. So, all right, stick around, Colin, and you guys, Jim, if you want to stick around, and G and Wheezy stick around. And if anybody, I guess I should say, we didn't ask Colin, but if he doesn't want to, but if you guys are interested in joining us in the after show, here is the link. You guys can join us. Oh, we're not going to stick around too late. So, all right, you guys have a great night.
Bye.
Fly safe.
Everyone.